There is a really big debate on calories. You're either on the side that you believe in calories and that we should be counting calories, or you're on the side that you think that calories don't really matter. So let's today take a look at everything. Look at what a calorie really is. Look at the scientific definition. Look at when it was created, that, or, I don't know, created is the right word, but when it was found, and kind of go through the history of it, and then look at whether or not we really need to be concerned with calories. All right, so let's start out with this. In the early 1800s, Nicholas Clement was the first known person to use the term calorie while teaching about heat and energy. In fact, the word comes from the Latin and it means heat. His teaching was that it was the amount of energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. This was in context to steam engines, not nutrition. Keep that in mind. That was the early 1800s. All right, then we get to the late 1800s, and this is when it starts getting looked at in terms of, in terms of nutrition. And first of all, even a little bit before this, maybe 5, 10 years or so before this, the idea of kilo calorie, which would be 1,000 of the small calories, came into play. Okay. And that's what American chemist Wilbur Atwater did. He took that kilo calorie idea and he came up with the concept of using calorie in nutrition. So let's look at that. He conducted experiments where he burned food in a bomb calorimeter and he measured how much energy it released. Okay. He released those findings and they became the basis of what we use today to calculate calories. Now, here's the interesting part. Okay. His concept of calories and nutrition aren't the same as what we talked about at the beginning, early 1800s, right? Because he used the kilocalorie. Okay. Kilocalorie, a K calorie, a calorie with a capital C, uppercase C, not lowercase, and it was equal to 1,000 of those small calories, the original idea that was temperature of 1 kilogram of water to 1 degree Celsius. Okay. So that's what he used. So now we go into the early 1900s, and nutrition science basically adopts the dietary calorie, capital C calorie, as the main way to measure food energy. Okay. Then we get into 1993. The FDA came up with the 2,000 calorie daily reference value. And this kind of goes into place with other things that happened around the same time with the nutrition fact labels. The nutrition fact labels, they came up with this idea and it became a requirement for any packaged food that you had to have your nutrition facts with calories on it and so forth. And they had to do this by early 1994. Okay. So here's the thing. In the late 80s and the early 90s, the FDA was looking to develop these standardized nutrition fact labels on the packaging foods. And they came up with that 2,000 calorie reference point as a base to the percentage daily values that consumers could use to compare foods. Okay. But how did they choose 2,000 calories? Well, this is interesting. They used surveys at the time that gave them averages for adult women to be around 1,800 to 2,200 calories consumed. Okay. They used men adult averages being around 2,200 to 3,000 calories per day. And with that, they wanted to create a simple number to represent the most what most people would relate to eating at that time. And that's how they came up with the 2,000 calorie diet, right? That people ate 2,000 calories per day type of thing. But they specifically acknowledged that the 2,000 calorie number was a communication tool and not a personal health recommendation. They also said that most people's real energy needs varied anywhere from, get this, 1,600 to 3,000 calories per day. And it depends on their age, the size, how tall they are, whatever, whether they're male or female, and their activity level. So the range is somewhere between 1,600 to 3,000 calories per day, but they used a 2,000 calorie diet for their thing, right? And here's where there's a problem with that. Today, everyone bases how much they should eat on a 2,000 calorie diet, 2,000 calories per day, which doesn't really effectively fit what people were averaging back in the 80s and early 90s, right? It was somewhere between that. It, there's lots of different factors for it, but most people don't look at it and say, well, I'm a 5-year-old woman or a 5 foot tall woman. I'm a 5 foot tall woman. And because of that, I need to factor more around 1,800 calories or maybe lower, like the 1,600 calorie range. And most people don't look at it as, well, I'm a 6'5" guy, broad shoulders, pretty big bone structure, and I need to factor in at least 3,000 calories or more. That's not how most people look at it. They just look at it as, okay, the FDA recommended 2,000. That's the recommendation. I should be getting around 2,000 calories per day. Now, that doesn't even touch the fact that these ranges were from surveys over 40 years ago, right? That is so different. I mean, our food is different today as well. Some of the ingredients that are in the food is so different, and they're using those averages from those surveys. And we also don't know if those surveys were even right for humans. Like, just because people average to eat that much, was that the right average? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? We don't know. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it, not just what somebody is eating, right? Exactly what type of food they're eating, what kind of sleep they're getting, stress levels, hormones, all that kind of stuff goes into it. And the issue here that you have is that people are basically using this 2,000 calorie per day idea, and they are now going to potentially restrict how much they eat, because let's face it, most people, they're not going to look at the other side of it and what kind of things do I need to do to try to offset how much I'm eating. Okay. They're going to look at the easiest way. And the easiest way is to have around that 2,000 calorie diet. Daily intake is to basically eat that or a little less, whatever the food is that makes that up. Does that really make sense? I don't know. But let's talk a bit more about calories, because calories are a construct. What do I really mean by that? Like, a construct, let's go into that definition, okay? Construct is a concept or an idea created by humans to describe, explain, or measure something that isn't directly observable. It's a theoretical framework, a way of trying to organize and make sense of a complex phenomena. Or another way to put it, a construct is something that humans invent to represent something real that we can't see or measure directly. The calorie doesn't exist in nature like atoms or cells do. It's a conceptual tool that humans use to quantify energy transfer. Now, I'm not saying that the theory behind a calorie is not right. I'm not saying that you don't really get if you go back to the original definition here, that you don't really get what a calorie is from raising the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. I'm not saying that that isn't true, right? What I am saying here, though, is that the idea of a calorie is scientifically sound physics, but it's shaky construct in biology. And here's why I say that. Human metabolism isn't a simple heat engine. Not all calories are metabolized equally. And gut microbiome, hormones, and digestion change how much energy you actually absorb. You don't eat a calorie in the way you eat a piece of food, because a calorie is a unit of energy, not a physical object. The calories on food labels represent the potential energy your body can derive from digesting and metabolizing that food, which is measured by the heat released when the food is burned in a bomb calorimeter. Here's the thing: the human species didn't sit there trying to figure out how many calories they were eating before the idea of a calorie ever was introduced, right? We are the only species in the animal kingdom that actually sits there and eats based on a caloric number devised by a government agency. All other species instinctively eat. And that's exactly what we did before the idea of calories ever existed. And that's what the carnivore diet does for you. There's no need to strain your brain trying to figure out exactly how many calories are in a package of meat that you're eating and so forth, or cheese, whatever it is. I don't pay attention to the representative calories listed on a package of meat. I instinctively eat the food that's on my plate for my meal. And I eat it until I'm either full or I notice that the food doesn't taste as good as it did when I first started eating. And I don't eat again until I'm truly hungry. That's the instinctively eating that we used to do before the idea of calories was ever introduced. There was way less obesity and metabolic disease back then when we didn't even know anything about calorie exists. So it makes no sense for us to say now that you have to count calories to lose weight or to be healthy. Regardless of what science says about calories being a measurement of energy, there is no reason that you need to concern yourself with calories. We're the only species in the animal kingdom that does that. Why? The idea in itself could be harmful because it can get you so wrapped up in calories, trying to restrict the amount of food that you are eating, that you're actually going to hurt your metabolism or so forth, hurt the different functions in your body. You might not be getting enough nutrients, the right nutrients and so forth, because you're restricting how much you're eating. And that's the harm that can come from it. Why has this become such a big thing in our society when it never, it wasn't even invented yet. It was a construct by humans that we created, that we invented to explain how energy and heat works. Why do we think that we have to abide by that and pay attention to that when humans ate for thousands and thousands of years, and our ancestors, even before humans, for millions of years, and never even looked at this and did perfectly fine? That's the problem I have with the idea of talking about calories and nutrition.